Welcome to Between the Lines. I gotta get my mind right. It is January. What are we up to, guys? The 12th. January the 12th, live from BBB Studios. It's Between the Lines. We got a new year, 2023. We replayed Chuck last week because of all that was going on in Washington. What a week, huh? So we had Congressman Show back on there. We're back live with a new set of shows over the next month, and we're excited. We got a lot to talk about. Our guest tonight is a local attorney. We're going to profile some people more. Daniel Forrester, a good friend of mine. Actually, he's well known in the community, does a lot, great guy. Actually, him and his wife, long before they were together, both worked for me when you were in college and law school. And I liked her more, still do. But, I mean, she's like my own kid, though. You know how that is, Chrissy. We're doing great. We have a lot going on tonight. If anybody didn't hear, Congressman Chuck Fleischmann has been put forth as the chairman of Energy and Water for the Appropriations Committee, which is called the Cardinal, based obviously on the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church, but they use that terminology in government. And there's 12 cardinals that distribute all of the money in the House nationwide. So we're very fortunate in the energy world here locally to have Chuck to reach that status. We've never had anybody reach that status. And he's earned it. He's one of the most knowledgeable people in the country on energy. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Alan.
Welcome to the show. I know he's got a law practice in downtown. When did you get your degree? 2004?
I graduated 2005, Alan, and
Out of law school?
Out of law school, and I passed the bar in November of 2005, and so I've been practicing ever since.
17 years.
17 years.
And you have an office on Main Street in Clinton.
I am exactly 2 buildings from the courthouse. From
Yeah,
Main
you
Street.
go right past the courthouse on Main Street, and you're on the left. You cross the streets, First Baptist
That's
Playground.
correct. First
Great
Baptist
church.
Playground, and used to be next to Signs Unlimited. Now we're next
Yeah.
to the candy store.
Yeah, Donna and the guys. I love Donna.
Yes.
And her sister. They're great people. And her dad was a wonderful man, too. So tell us a little bit about growing up and what's your background and just basic things. You grew up in Campbell County, next door.
That's
10 miles away, correct?
It's a little more than 10. We're probably a good about 30 miles, maybe.
Is it that far?
Well, up to where I was in La Follette.
Oh, you were up high. See, the whole world's Cove Lake to me, and what's it with Jacksboro's right down there at the bottom, right?
Jacksboro, and then on up the road, of course, is La Follette, and I lived all the way up to about the end of La Follette, up to what we call the start of the valley, which
If you
would
go
be
far enough in the valley, it's like almost to Kentucky. I went to a funeral up there. Saber knew somebody up there, and we went to a funeral, and we had to drive 30, 40 miles from the interstate.
correct. You can go all the way up to Kentucky from there. It's a straight shot.
It's beautiful country up there.
Very beautiful.
Valley's beautiful.
A lot of farms and a lot of cattle.
So you went to Campbell County High School.
Went to Campbell County High School and graduated in '96.
Okay. Getting old.
Yes,
So you 45?
45.
It's interesting, our judges now, if you look across the span of our judges in Anderson County, I think the average age is 46 or 7. A lot of new young attorneys, commissioners. We got a lot of young commissioners. So we're seeing a generational change in all of these positions in government. It's been kind of interesting. I know you practice in front of all those judges. You got out of Campbell County. What'd you do when you got out of high school?
Well, got out of high school, then I went to East Tennessee State University.
Okay.
And I went there for just a little over 4 years. I changed majors a few times.
Okay.
And then from there, took a couple of years off and went to law school.
Okay. That's great. When you were working as an intern, were you in law school or were you in between?
I believe when I worked as an intern here in Anderson County, I think it was right after, I was out of law school, and I think waiting.
Really? That's
the
right,
bar
waiting for the
results.
bar. You're right. And if I remember I had 188 people in those days for over 10 years. But did you work in the district attorney's office?
That's correct.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Then it was, at the time, Jim Ramsey.
Yes,
He
sure,
was still in office.
absolutely, across the street. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's fantastic. So you went to law school in Florida, I believe, and then you
Correct.
came back and you started your practice, as we talked about in 06, 07, and you've been at it a long time. And now you live in Andersonville, Tennessee.
That's correct.
Yeah, I know. You live in Andersonville, moved about a year ago, and you're set up here. You've always had your practice here. Your work has been
Absolutely.
Anderson County focused.
From day one.
From day one. But you lived in La Follette, and you lived all the way down to here, and now you become a resident here, because really this is where all your relationships are.
That's correct. We commuted for a while, then of course, decided finally to move to Andersonville, but really and truthfully, and of course, my wife is from Anderson County and went to school here as well, but really all of our friends and most everyone we know, we're connected to the county. This is basically where everyone, all of our friends are, by far the majority. We still have, of course, friends.
Well, you go to
Campbell
church in
County.
Anderson County, you do other things in Anderson County. That was a move that made sense. You're probably one of the most, and I say this because, it's always hard to say, but you're probably one of the most respected attorneys in Anderson County. Everybody loves your demeanor and a lot of what you do. How is your, well, let's talk about your family a little bit more before we switch over. You have your wife, Chrissy, who I just love to death. We're both blessed by the fact that our wives are smarter than we are.
That's true.
Especially in my case. And I'm blessed. I mean, she's been a just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful marriage. But you've been married to Chrissy. How long y'all been married?
Oh, goodness, you would put me on the spot of that. We've been married since '09. So
Okay, I got the numbers, 13. And we got a baby girl, and you have a son from a previous marriage, but you got a baby girl who's not a baby anymore.
No, she's
a princess.
She's still the baby to me, but
Yeah.
yes, she's 10, going on 11.
I'm telling you, I'll be honest with you. I've been around kids, obviously, a long time, I'm an old man. But I can tell you flat out, that is one of the most well-behaved children and one of the most classiest kids. What's she, about 10?
She's 10.
Very, she's wonderful, isn't she?
Very great kid.
Sit proper and just doesn't bother you, doesn't say anything, and when spoken to, she responds. I mean, just outstanding. And we've been to some events, and she always behaves well. All kids aren't like that. A lot of them are like this, and a lot of them are like that. And I've just really been impressed with her, Chloe.
Chloe, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very fortunate. I have 2 children. My other one's in Oak Ridge High School.
Yeah, he
He's a
was cool with
junior.
my son. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're all buddies. They went a little bit same age, a little bit here. Yeah,
Correct, and they're both I was very fortunate. I have 2 very well-behaved, very good children, both very smart, can't ask for better children.
took after their mother.
Absolutely, they didn't get it from me.
That's true. I would say my son is probably demeanor-wise more like me in a lot of ways, but he's his mother. I mean, he's got that New River Phillips in him. He's just real quiet. He's real quiet, and he's spiritual. These kids today, really, they're in their own world, and in the sense that they're, they live in some kind of phone world, cyber world, gaming world that we're just one of the players around them, and it's just not the same as it when we were kids. We stayed outside. Now I'm 20 years older than you, but we stayed outside all the time. We played ball.
Well, we did too. I think you look at cell phones and things; those really came in when I was older too. And so,
Yeah.
our children today, like you're.
Let me think.
Like
In
Caleb,
96. Yeah, when you were in high school, they started to get more popular.
we started getting cell phones about when I was in college. It got to where occasionally someone
Flip
would have
phones,
a big giant boxy flip phone.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I like the flip phone. I'm going to record for that. I like the flip phone, but
But we were definitely generationally different. Your teenagers probably like mine. Mine always has an earbud in or music playing and a cell phone in hand, and it's just
no,
not.
that's my wife. But the she loves the music. She loves it. She's just so engaged in public. But my son's more of he'll just look at it without the earphones. He'll listen. You can yell at him. He doesn't hear you. There's more out of that. But they're both great kids. He makes wonderful grades. Got a good heart. He's just hard to describe how good these kids are. I know your son too. Tell me about your family. Anybody in law in your background? Anybody in medicine? Anybody? Why'd you pick law over medicine? I mean, you're a smart guy. Most community knows that. Why'd you medicine, accounting?
Well, when I was talking about undergrad, I picked at first. I was going to actually major in accounting, and I took about 2 semesters of it and decided it was way too boring for me.
That's what everybody says.
And so while I was in law school, I took a criminology class, or
Right.
not at law school, I'm sorry, in undergrad. I took
Yeah,
a criminology class, and then from there realized I really liked the law, and actually had initially thought I will go to law school with the goal of being sort of like, I actually thought I would go and be a prosecutor, and was sort of where I was leaning at the time. But when I ended up in law school and then graduated, ended up in private practice. And
There's a limited, people don't understand, there's limited jobs being a prosecutor. There's all, I have someone logging all of the attorneys in the Knoxville bar right now for another project, and they're on the D's and there's 500. How can there be 2,500 lawyers in the Knoxville bar? Is that possible?
there are lots and lots of attorneys, especially in the Knoxville area, and many that of course, you never meet or never have a case with. We have so many law schools
I
right
didn't think
now.
about that. Would somebody from Gatlinburg or Crossville, would they be in the Knoxville bar? Would people outside of Knoxville join that bar?
Some will. That's true. We have some members of the Anderson County Bar that are actually not, I would consider a Knox County attorney. I think I think on the pictures in the courthouse, for example, like we have David Vallone, who's a very well-known Knoxville attorney.
And a very good one.
Very good-
I've saw
very
him
good
practice
attorney.
for years. He is excellent.
I've had
You
some-
better come with your A game. You're going to be able
Yes.
to go against David.
I've had a few cases against David over the years and tried some against David, and as aggressive and as good as he is in the courtroom, though, he's a very, very nice
Easy
man
going,
outside.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
very,
He is.
very likable
He is
person.
very skilled. There's a lot of Knoxville attorneys that are very skilled. But there were a lot more attorneys 30 years ago in Anderson County. I mean, you had these major firms. Our prosecutor here, our DA, David Clark, was one of the top civil attorneys in the 90s out of law school. You had, Don Layton was the top, George Buxton. You had a lot of different lawyers that represented people for various things, and it just seemed like there was a lot of selection. Today, firms just don't seem to be as plentiful.
They're not, and we really don't have very many attorneys in Anderson County right now. And again, back in the 90s, you had Don Elledge.
Yeah, Don was he was in the bank building, I remember. Yeah.
Correct. He was in the bank building with Jerry
And the
Shattuck.
Riders were here.
The Reidners were here and had a much,
Not to take anything away from Whalen and them and AG, they're good lawyers, but it just seemed like there was a higher profile about everything.
and then there was definitely probably more number. You had Vicki Crandall. That was a
I remember Vicky,
very, she was a
tough.
very tough, very good domestic law attorney, handled family law. And so there's really a handful. There's not many attorneys in this county right now that even handle criminal law at this point. There just seems to be a shortage. We have seems like lots of people graduating from law school, and I don't know where they go
And
to.
let me, and let me throw David Stewart's in there. In the background of civil law, David's been outstanding for years. And there's a lot of others, the Cantrell firm. Obviously, Bruce Fox is in a class up at the top. And there's a lot of people. When you get into criminal, though, you've got a few people. You've got Mike Farley. You've got Mike Ritter, probably the best preliminary hearing guy I ever saw. I saw him one time in court come up and go, "Now, officer, when you had this guy out walking on the side of the road, did he go down in a line? Did he go down your imaginary line? And was he going to Disney World?" I used to die. He's so gifted. Michael was gifted.
No, I won't tell the whole story on TV.
No.
He threw a roll of bologna out in front of Judge Elledge one time in the courtroom, and
Oh, that's fantastic.
and,
I've never heard that. That's amazing.
but no, Mike was definitely a fantastic.
Still
criminal
practices, still
attorney.
does some
practices.
work. Yeah, but he's just, listen, Mike's not bringing 40%. He's never too busy. He brings 100% to every case.
Every case.
I love that guy. He's probably my favorite attorney, with all due respect to you. Closest friend, and he's just a great guy. And Mike's, him and Candy, great people. Tell me, did you ever consider anything besides the law? I mean, counting, you said, anything else?
Well, at the time when I finished undergrad, I thought I really got out and was sort of over school at that point as everyone else. I'd been in for 4 years and went out and worked for a little while and realized that I needed to go back to school to be able to make a better living and do better for myself. And so I don't know that I consider too much else. I pretty much, when I first went to school, of course, you always think, well, I might try medical school. When I was taking core classes at ETSU, I decided I did not care for biology and those types of
I
things.
just couldn't. My son's good at it. I can't handle it.
I could handle it. but I
Biology was
just didn't
better
like
for me than chemistry and stuff. And I loved physics because it had a little bit of an element to it beyond science. But, that's too hard for me.
Well, and so anyway, and I ended up more or less deciding that I was pretty focused on law school probably by the second year of undergrad in. That was my plan, and then I just took a break when I graduated, but ended up
You've
going
done an
right back.
outstanding job. What's your son want to do?
We don't know yet. He's still up in the air about it. He's a junior. He I think, is going to go on to college, but he's still, I think, deciding what he wants to major in.
Ditto to all that for my son. The only thing I would say is my son kind of likes data analytics and he can pull apart a stock and talk about movements and stuff that's digital and data that he can look at in sports. I mean, analyze something, he'll look at me and say, nah, it's a good night for a double-double for that guy. I mean, he knows all the stats and stuff like that. Whereas when I was little, I knew the three stations, all the times the shows came on in the three black and white states. That's all I had to work with. All right, we're going to take a break and come back and talk about Anderson County court system and how it's put together. Some counties are different. And talk about some of our favorite people and get it done. So let's take a break, Chandler.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place and instead of what you came for, you found this? What would you do? The truth is, all drug use comes with risk. Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. If you or someone you love is struggling with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/knowtherisks.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
Welcome back. We're talking with Clinton attorney Daniel Forrester about the courts and about other things that go on in our different court systems and everything. And it's been very entertaining so far. We're going to talk. You saw General Clark's commercial on elderly abuse. He's done such a wonderful job in trying to reach out to the community in different segments. I can't say enough about Melissa Miller and the Family Justice Center. They're really doing a good job with victims and stuff. But elderly people are victims too. You know, let me say it's becoming more interesting to me every day. So there are laws that protect seniors in things, you know, but I think it's hard to prove.
It is, and I think, and interestingly, I think during the preview, you showed a commercial that I think for General Clark, and one of the things he mentioned is a lot of times elder abuse, I guess statistically determined, happens by people that actually are the ones that are caring for the individual, and so it's very hard to report. But I think now there's been, like in 2019, our legislature enacted stiffer laws to punish people, enhancing felonies. For example, if an individual is responsible for serious physical injury or harm to an elderly person, it's now a B felony. It's a minimum of 8 years. It could be up to the top of the range and a much larger fine. And now there's, of course, the elder abuse hotline, which I think was on there as well. Yeah. And basically everyone in the state is treated sort of as a mandatory reporter. If you're aware or suspect elder abuse, you should call and report it.
Part of the problem is a lot of elderly people, family members of mine, are affected with dementia and some other issues, few of them. And when they get abused, they have a hard time creating collective evidence that works. You have to have physical signs of abuse. And you know, another thing with the elderly and with senior citizens is identity theft, economic theft. People steal from them.
Yes, we see that through the courts. You see it in the criminal system, but we also see it in Chancery now as well with various, say, for example, as conservatorships. We've had instances where we've had individuals that have just been taken advantage of.
Define conservatorship for our viewers. I mean, most people know, but
A conservatorship would be, of course, when the court has to step in and appoint basically a conservator to take care of an individual usually for, say,
and that's usually someone close to them.
generally by statute, the preference is, especially on a conservatorship, for it to be an immediate family member. Generalizing, but generally, yes, you would want it to be
And
a
that
family
would be
member.
to manage their economic affairs, right?
It can be to manage that, their health care, basically make all their daily decisions depending on what the individual needs. It can be a limited conservatorship all the way up to what we would say is a full conservatorship, more or less, to let them make every decision that needs to be made.
But
for the
don't you have to
individual.
have impaired faculties to get that kind of help?
Correct. You would have to, and there has to be a doctor, of course, come
Oh,
in
I
and
didn't think about that.
and certify that the individual does in fact need it. And there are steps in place with the court. They appoint a guardian ad litem in conservatorship cases, which is an individual that's an independent party that will go out and investigate and file a report with the court as well.
Much like youth, juvenile court has that, right? Guardian
Yes,
ad litem.
it is
We'll get back to
similar.
that, but go ahead. So basically, we're dealing with the same thing. People that can't, a juvenile has no rights. A juvenile needs the guardian ad litem to make sure that they're being treated fairly by all sides. So similar to senior. So you get a, do you see guardian ad litem in married situations, or is it mostly people that are alone?
It's much less. You do see it in, say,
Sometimes.
for example, in divorce cases, if
Yeah, I
that's
think that.
maybe. But generally, we only see, usually guardians, we see them on termination cases. They have to be appointed in juvenile, what we call dependency and neglect cases, which is where you have a child maybe in a bad situation at home, or
Right.
some scenario where the court has stepped in. They'll appoint a guardian ad litem. So they're in on like conservatorships as well. And if you have minors, even say, for example, on a probate or an estate matter where they're an heir, the court will appoint someone to watch out for them and make sure their
It's
interests.
good to know, folks. It's
are
good to know.
protected.
We need to understand that those services are available to people, and they don't really know. In the Family Justice Center, when I was bragging on Melissa and the staff, they serve seniors too. If you have
correct.
a problem, right down in Jackson Square, bottom of Kentucky Avenue, where us older people remember Oak Ridge Library was there, right next to Alexander, across the street, the Family Justice Center is helping people. So if you think if you're in a situation, please take advantage of those resources. And they're wonderful people, 3 great people down there. And let's talk about the court system. You know, I know a little bit about it, and my wife works in it. You come out and you have, on the base level, you have 2 sessions courts, but let's just say the authorizations of sessions court, which is a misdemeanor court for the most part, or hearings to bind stuff over to provide a service to get it to a felony status to the circuit court. Kind of clean the pipeline a little bit. But you also have juvenile court, which takes all youth into different situations. We have Brian Hunt, and juvenile judge.
Yes.
And we have Matt Tuck and Victoria Bowling. And hearing good things about both of them. They're brand new.
Yes, that's.
I know you're friends with Matt, and I'm friends with Victoria, and we both know them all well, but the Bowling family is friends of ours. And things are running smooth, and it's been good. Now, if you get arrested for a DUI, a bad check, driving without a license, there's probably 50 different misdemeanors, right?
Oh,
You're going to
probably.
go into that court.
Correct.
How does that process work? Okay, I drive. We'll just do a DUI because it's the most common for people. I get a DUI. I'm a little bit over the limit. I get an arraignment. I get a court date. Usually I get booked, right?
Yes, you go to jail, book process, hopefully bond out, and then they'll set you a court date with Sessions Court. You'll be arraigned, but then you'll have, both the Sessions Court at this point, you'll go in and generally have a court date for your attorney to go.
Okay, let's back up. So I get arrested on the 1st of the month, and they set a bond of $2,500. Okay, so if I'm going to get out, I got to have $250
Yes.
to pay the bonds.
Actually, I think it's about $285. I think they charge you
They
a
get no
processing fee as well.
Not everybody else does, from the pharmacy to everywhere else, a grocery store. But okay, so you get that done. Now, if you can't afford it, a lawyer will be appointed for you.
You can absolutely, of course, in the entire country, everyone's afforded, absolutely has the right to an attorney in any criminal proceeding. If you can't afford one, the courts will appoint one for you. And in Tennessee as well, if you're unable to make bond in Sessions Court, your right is to have a hearing within 10 days to determine if there's probable cause for your case, especially if you can't make bond. That's the way we try
But
to.
before you do anything, you've got to get an attorney appointed or private.
Yes.
Okay, so, and please ask for an attorney, don't go without one.
Absolutely.
So, you go in, and you get it, the guy comes out, and he says, okay, we're gonna hear your case on, remember, it was the first of the month, we're gonna hear your case on February 18th or something, okay, great. Okay. We'll get I'll get my own attorney, okay, fine. Now, what's the process? You meet with the client, what is his options? What's the client's options?
Well, your options in Sessions Court itself, you're a court of limited jurisdiction. If it's a misdemeanor, you can enter a plea in Sessions Court, and you can even have a trial in Sessions Court. I don't know that I'm aware of anyone that's ever had one in Sessions Court, but you can actually have a trial there in front of the judge. Other than that, if any other charge, including a misdemeanor, you can then have a preliminary hearing to let the court determine if there's probable cause enough to sustain the elements of the offense, and the case would then bind over to the grand jury. Other than that, unless you can negotiate or obtain a dismissal with the DA or something with the judge, then the case, other than that, your only other option would be to enter a plea in the Sessions
And
Court.
90% of Sessions Court cases end in pleas generally, a probation or a fine or something.
A
of that.
good portion of them are
That's too high.
resolved in some form or fashion, I would say, at Sessions Court. I don't know about the
Because
percentage
there's
of
no
plea.
love up above for people bringing up traffic cases and stuff of that nature.
No.
I learned that under Judge Scott. I mean, you just, it's not meant to do that, to be fair. The judges are, Judge Scott's absolutely right. You know, Judge Spitzer, you don't want to sit there and spend 3 hours. Now, your court costs soar,
Absolutely. Your court cost,
the defendant.
your court cost, I would say in some cases, could even triple going to criminal court.
Sure.
But you're correct. A lot of the criminal judges, and I won't name any in particular, but I'm aware of one or two that would yell at you and want to know why there was a misdemeanor in his court.
In other counties.
In other counties.
Yeah, get our boys off the hook.
Correct. It wasn't in Anderson County.
No, okay.
But generally, though, most of the time misdemeanors can be.
And they don't yell at you, they yell at the attorney.
Oh yeah,
They can
absolutely. Not the
always-
defendant. The defendant has a right.
What are you doing here? Yeah, I understand. That's really good. Okay, so we have 2 Sessions Courts that handles all this stuff. You get in front of the judge, they get an attorney. If it's a serious enough thing that you can appeal it up to circuit court, no matter what the judgment is, because it's not a court of record. So you have a right to appeal to an upper court, no matter what level you're on, right? Even juvenile, right?
Correct. Well, the juvenile court of appeal, of course, can be appealed too, and that's an interesting. Juvenile court's a whole other animal. Certain actions in juvenile court appeal up to circuit court, which, well, in their county, they actually go to. If it's a delinquent matter, Judge Spitzer hears them. If it is a dependency and neglect or that type of action, those will go to the chancellor up in the chancery court. But other than that, like other types of cases, would also go to the court of appeals out of juvenile. So juvenile, you can actually end up in 3 different appellate courts, so to speak, depending on what you're appealing. Sort of unusual. Sessions courts would all go to circuit usually.
Is it different in different counties? Are some I know the circuit, having worked with judges in Bradley and other areas, I know that the circuit chancery, some courts have criminal judges, like our good friend Sandra Donnie, Judge Donnie. She has a criminal jurisdiction, whereas Judge Spitzer shares a jurisdiction.
Correct. Our court system is unique. Back when they established our chancery court and our circuit court, they're technically both circuit courts and have general jurisdiction, but they designated one as a chancery and one as a circuit, and so they've set up to where air juvenile appeals route to 2 different courts. Generally, they would go just to circuit court, except for some of the cases that go straight to the Court of Appeals. But because of how our system's set up, that's just how heirs in this county go from juvenile up to appeal. It's probably way more complicated than what
that's
we
okay.
need to get into.
It's good we need to understand, and we're going to come back after we take this break. We're going to come back and talk about juvenile and chancery court and children, because I think a lot of people are interested, especially grandparents and other people. How do you petition rights? Who goes to? I have a kid who gets in trouble, or I have a custody battle with my wife or whoever, and these families come out. What determines whether you go to chancery or juvenile court or other things on delinquencies and different things, or custody and different things? And we'll talk about that. Chandler, let's take a short break.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
This is my husband, Alex Hussey. Alex is about 2 weeks away from coming home.
I was point man in foot patrol, and I stopped on the bomb. Lost my legs and my left hand in an explosion.
And he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
There are so many mountains to climb, and we do it together.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories, great and small.
Come on, Alex, take on this mountain. That's what this is all about.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
Alex has conquered this mountain. That's something he won't forget.
With the right support, there are no limits.
Look at that smile! You did it!
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
This has meant so much.
Thank you, DAV.
Alex Hussey, thank you for your service. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking with Attorney Daniel Forrester about the different court structures and systems and what our basic citizens go through and what courts appeal. One of the most common questions I'm asked in political world too, one of the most common questions is, what determines whether I go to juvenile court or chancery court? If there's a custody battle, et cetera, why would it not go, in my understanding, you correct me, if you're not married, it goes to juvenile. If you're married, it goes to chancery. Is it that simple?
That's pretty much it in a nutshell, Alan.
So,
that's pretty close.
If me and Susie Jones are living together and we have a child and we get divorced, who gets custody is determined by the juvenile judge, not by the chancery court.
Correct. Actually, the statute, I think, will allow you to file it in chancery, but however, the general practice, everyone files them in juvenile. And so, yes, you can file a juvenile.
So Tennessee law does not recognize anyone who's not married and has a child to qualify to go to chancery. Is that what it is?
No, it's just that wherever they've conferred the jurisdiction, basically.
But why confer the jurisdiction that way? Why can't, I mean, if you've lived with 7 years and you all get divorced and you have a child, why wouldn't you be able to go to chancery?
Well, if you're divorced, that is where it would go, if you're divorcing.
No, that's a good point. If you're breaking up, I'm sorry. If you're just two people who live together and you're going out on your own.
If you're breaking up, I'm pretty sure if it's just two unmarried people that have a child together, actually I think the statute confers jurisdiction on the juvenile or the chancery. You can file either court.
Oh, that's good. Okay, I get it. So you can go either way. And attorneys, where would you say the most cases go? And does the age matter? Does anything matter?
The age really doesn't matter at all, as long as as long as we have a minor child. But generally, most of the cases with unmarried parents that have a child together generally end up in the juvenile court, and then, of course, all your divorces end up in chancery court.
Yeah, and that makes sense because there's no track record for the chancery court to follow without a divorce and all of those paperwork. If you're just moving out, there's not enough discovery or records or history for them to really make a move. Is that it?
Well, I think just partially it's just how the legislature's set up
Yeah.
for those to be heard.
That makes sense.
There are many cases with unmarried people where there's extensive discovery and things that go on. Probably they're every bit as contentious as any divorce I've ever had, and so they just generally where they end up filed. I know of a story recently in another county of an attorney that did file an action to set co-parenting time between unmarried people in a chancery court, and the judge actually made her transfer it to juvenile. I'm not going to name any names or anything,
no,
but
of course not.
But I think legally they can file it in chancery, but it seems to be that's the preference nowadays, and there's a push, and even the judges sort of expect, I think, for it to go through juvenile on an unmarried case.
Historically, and I've worked with different, in the political realm, I work with different judges from different areas. It just seems like circuit court's always overloaded. They're always behind. I guess because of jury trials, but you could have a jury trial in chancery court, right? I mean, somebody sues somebody, and
Yes, and
in civil case especially, right?
well, in particular with Air Circuit Court, with Judge Spitzer in Air County, he has civil jurisdiction and he has criminal jurisdiction. So not only does he have a full civil docket of different size of probably everything from medical malpractice to other sizable civil cases, he also has a full criminal docket. He has the entire county. Some other counties like Knox County and Campbell have designated criminal courts that only hear criminal cases, so that takes a lot of the load off, whereas...
And he's one of the first ones to the courthouse and one of the first ones to leave. He is a worker, buddy.
Yes, he's there.
I've known him personally, and he's just another one that married somebody smarter than him, though. With all due respect to Judge Spitzer, Tracy, I'm going to throw that out there, that you're like Chrissy, and they're all friends in Sabre, and they're very smart, very smart. She's tough.
Tracy?
Maybe the toughest of the group. I know Sabre and Chrissy might not agree with that, but Tracy Spitzer is tough. I love her to death. She's just a great lady. Of course, she grew up in our streets here, played ball, softball, and everything, and she's just fantastic. I guess I look at the court system, and people say it just takes too long to get things done. But is juvenile court caught up? Is it in pretty good? Is it in pretty good shape?
I think things seem to be running a lot better now in all the courts since COVID.
You can't blame anybody for COVID. No.
COVID caused a horrible backlog, I think, just everywhere. But no, for the most part, our cases tend to move pretty quick. Generally, from the filing of a petition, obviously, I think people sometimes, at this day and age, everyone expects things to be done immediately.
Sure.
But of course, anytime you file, say, a petition for a divorce or
That's
a petition to set
time-consuming.
co-parenting, you file it, the other party is served, they have 30 days by law to respond.
Sure.
And so there are just
In
things.
any case.
In any case. And so those things, of course, just naturally take time, and you have to wait. They have to respond, and if they have an attorney, you go through discovery. So some cases can just take time to just actually be developed to be ready for trial, but generally I think they move pretty fast. I know generally I have a very busy domestic law practice, and generally our cases move along. We rarely ever have a case that stays, that I would consider old or that's hung around. You always have an exception, but generally they move pretty well, and generally getting a court date, at least in these courts in Anderson, is usually not very far out. Generally you can call and expect to have a setting usually about 60 days out, which is generally pretty good.
You've got you built a court practice in Chancery Court and family law and domestic law, and you're known for that. Tell me about Rule 31 mediation. I got it right. Is that the name? 31?
Oh, yes, that's
Rule
it.
31. I remember when it came in about 20 years ago, and basically they were trying to give people a chance to save their marriages or at least be better educated towards the breakup. You're certified. What does it take? What does it do? Tell us about it.
Basically, to be Rule 31 certified, of course, you go through, I'm wanting to say it's about 40-some hours of training. You get certified to be a Rule 31 mediator. It's actually a very wonderful process in general, and now a lot of courts will require you to attend that mediation. Generally, you're supposed to go through Rule 31 mediation on divorces before you can have your trial. It can be waived under certain circumstances, But generally, we go through them on almost even Judge Hunt and air courts will issue an order to go to Rule 31 mediation before he'll let you have a trial on custody cases now. But what we have found is they're very effective. They're very good at settling cases. I find the majority of my cases, a lot of times we can work out in a Rule 31 mediation. So it frees up the court. They're very useful. They allow you to get good information about your case on ones even when they don't settle, but they're very productive. It also allows people, especially in divorces, it keeps people from being so combative with each other. If they can sit down and settle their case and work it out, in my opinion, it's very good, especially if it's two people trying to raise a child or children. If they can work together, work out a plan that works best for their children, I find that serves them much better down the road because, as you know, Alan, once you go to court and you have a trial and everyone's trying to say all the bad things they can about the other person, it can cause a lot of damage and a lot of hate and a lot of things that can be detrimental just for the parties and even getting along with each other.
Let me ask you a question. What's the difference between parenting classes and Rule 31 mediation?
Well, parenting classes are required by statute. Those are usually now
4 hours.
4 hours at this point because of COVID. Now people would take them now online.
I'm not a big fan of online DUI school, online parenting classes. I just don't, it just doesn't make enough sense. But okay, I mean, who am I,
Well, I find everything in person tends to be better in general classes. Even Rule 31 mediations, we do them online sometimes. And as a mediator myself, I prefer to have people in person.
But as a Rule 1 approved mediator, you're in between two other attorneys and their clients, right? You're
Yes.
there to oversee the mediation. Okay.
Yes, correct. You basically conduct it as a Rule 31 mediator, and the preference this day is everyone's in separate rooms, so you'll have an attorney and their client each in separate rooms, and basically you start on whichever, usually with the plaintiff.
When we facilitated some at the court, we facilitated some parenting classes. They could attend together.
They can.
But if we thought it was too hostile or it was a bad situation, if either person thought it was, then they went separately.
Yes. Well, and when I first started practicing, there were actually still mediators that would do the Rule 31 mediation and try to mediate with people in the same room. And generally what we found is it's just not worth it. That usually breaks down
tempers and all that.
So
they wouldn't be there if they weren't angry with each other.
Correct. Yes, there's a reason they're getting divorced usually.
How many Rule 31 mediation cases would Chancellor Cantrell see or assign in a given year or month?
I don't know how many she would assign. I know she will order, I don't know that she would order. It's expected by statute in divorces for people to attend before they go to trial. So she generally didn't have to order, but I would say a good majority of her cases, any ones where they got to trial with her, probably did go to mediation, especially with a divorce.
But I mean, I'm trying to get a feel for the community. Is that 40 a year or 80 a year? Or divorces are down, don't you think? Economic times are worse. I'm telling you, folks, historically, the worse the economic times, the lower the divorce rate. Nobody can afford to move out.
If you can't afford it, you just stay together, or they make
through it, right,
And the same with criminal, with people charged criminally, they'll opt for appointed attorneys more so than.
No, we'll talk about domestic violence after the break because that is a real Pandora's box.
Yes,
it's just. I have a lot of respect for sessions judges and circuit judges and people that have to deal with that because he said, she said.
Well, it's horrible, and you have people, and the other thing
the laws got stricter.
Well, the law's stricter now.
It's kind of like NFL football. You can't push them.
No, and
that's probably a good thing in domestic violence.
They've made changes to that. Of course, now you have the 12-hour mandatory hold. If you're arrested, you have to stay in jail for 12 hours, and they've changed.
Want you to cool down.
Correct. It's
you want to get out of jail and run right back over there. Yeah?
Correct, and we see, in the court system, and probably, I'm sure Saber's probably mentioned you before too. A lot of what we run into is you'll have someone arrested for domestic, or they'll be repeatedly in the courtroom, and I'm sure it's frustrating to the courts and the DAs, and the alleged victim will come in. It's a spouse, doesn't want to prosecute, won't cooperate, and so it causes a lot of. It doesn't clog up the system, but we have a lot of cases come through that the DA sometimes can't prosecute, and people that are in and out that's wasting manpower and time, and so they're interesting cases.
Well, I think the parameters of domestic violence are pretty broad. I mean, you can pick up a shoe and throw it, and technically,
Oh, it's an assault.
that's right. It's
Absolutely.
an assault, which would have been unheard of 30 years ago.
Oh, yes, you see
But-
that now. And generally, if they're called out, they are supposed to arrest one of the individuals
One of
out
the two.
there. And like you said, it can be a
I kind of support that because they're not a babysitting group. Our officers of the law get called. They should have the right to act. That's my opinion.
And you're right, though, but it could be as simple as I shoved you, or I had a case at one time.
Well, they become, but, and I'm not saying it can be the victim, it could be the assailant, but the police get weaponized in domestic disputes, and they shouldn't be. You shouldn't make up lies and force them into situations, and they know they're street smart. I mean, they're there all the time.
Oh, there's people do it all the time. We used to call it the Knox County Playbook because they used to love to file over, and for orders of protection, they would call and get you arrested for domestic, then immediately go down and file for an order of protection because in Knox County they would give you child support and spousal support, and so people would go in and do this by the book. They would call and get the person arrested, then immediately go file an order of protection and seek. So yes, we do see people abuse the system with it quite a bit.
Like a machine.
Yes.
Chandler, last break. Thank you. We're right back.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place and instead of what you came for, you found this? What would you do? The truth is, all drug use comes with risk. Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. If you or someone you love is struggling with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/knowtherisks.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or Adult Protective Services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
Welcome back. We're talking to Daniel Forrester, an attorney at law here in Anderson County and Clinton. And Daniel, you practice in other counties too, do you not?
That's correct, Alan. I've traveled. I like to tell people if it touches Anderson County, I usually attend. I go all over Anderson, Claiborne, Campbell, Scott, Morgan, Rome, Knox, of course, Loudon. Generally, anywhere in the area, I've been to.
Yeah. Do you do any in Blunt?
A little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of angled off. It's a little bit different. How many sessions judges? I mean, I think there was 4 in Knox County last time, maybe 6.
I think there's 6, if I'm thinking correctly. I know there's at least 4. If not, I'm wanting to say 6.
Yeah, I knew some sessions back, man, 20, 25 years ago over Judge Emery and others, and I think most of them have retired. And Hamilton County, I believe, had 4 or 5, so that would make sense, 6 there. We have 2 here, which for this jurisdiction is probably a lot more than per person than they would be. But I think Oak Ridge and the rural areas are distinctly different enough it makes sense. Because all the commercial business, the civil business in Oak Ridge, you probably have enough to justify both those. And of course, we have a private act to support it that was filed in 1993, et cetera, et cetera. how do things differ in courtrooms from county to county? I mean, the rules, the procedures, are they based on the comfort level of the judges and their habits?
Well, yes, I think as you go from different counties, all judges are unique and they have a certain way all judges run the courtroom. They kind of have their own style. They're similar, but they'll all have unique differences. And one of the things that's interesting, especially on criminal cases, every county, even Anderson and both of our sessions courts, will have different forms for the same, say, for example, for like a plea, to enter a plea. And it always amazed me. I've never understood why we didn't have a uniform statewide form for all the sessions courts, but we usually have their own methods of entering agreements.
Probably the reason we don't is it's not a court of record. There's no restrictions on that.
It could be, but anyway, so every county you go to, you kind of have to figure out the lay of the land, but they're all, while we have the same body of law, they're unique.
Well, you're covering the same subjects, just some are in French, some are in Spanish, some are in English, you know what I mean?
Sort of, yes.
Figuratively speaking, not literally speaking, of course.
Well,
I can't remember one time. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was going to say,
go ahead.
well, in some of the outlier counties, like you go to Campbell County, their sessions court has juvenile court, criminal and civil jurisdiction, and divorces in Roane County. And, and so.
And Mike Davis up in Morgan, I thought, is there anything he doesn't here?
Exactly.
He does it all up there.
And so depending on where you go, you have some of their sessions courts have a lot more jurisdiction, so to speak, than others on what they can hear.
And there's different salary structures in different systems, are there not? Like if you're a sessions judge in a county of 20,000, you're going to get paid different than a sessions judge in Knoxville or Nashville?
That's correct. I think they have different tiers on the sessions.
It's not a lot different, but it's some different. And in some counties, I believe in Union or some areas, if it's small enough, you can still practice law.
Correct. And I think in Union County, actually, the Sessions Court judge there, which is now, I think, Judge Patterson, correct. I think he can still, I don't know if he does or not, I think he can still practice and be the judge.
His predecessor did. It allowed him because they have a reduced salary for their job, and it's kind of hard to, hard to maintain. Yeah, I mean, you got to have quality people on the bench. And if they can't maintain a certain level, then they're not going to sit on the bench for long. I mean, that's my real. I've never been to some of those counties like that. Now, I do know Union because the predecessor was a good friend and a good guy. It's interesting. You don't do anything in Union County then?
Oh, no, I actually go to Union. I've was just thinking, I don't know that I've been up there. I haven't been in front of Judge Patterson, but I used to go in front of Judge Edmondson quite a bit, and just by pure chance of just not had anything
One of the
up
best
there.
guys in the world, isn't he?
I always liked Judge Edmondson, yes. He it's always super fun to go in front of. He was a very nice individual, very smart. I always enjoyed, and I still will go up there, of course. I just as of late, by pure chance, haven't had a case.
In the mid-'80s, Congressman Fleischman, Jeff Haygood, Judge Edmondson, there's about 5 or 6 of them that all went to UT Law School together, and we're all buddies. It's always great when we get them together just to hear them talk. Jeff talks the most, of course, but Chuck tries to keep up. But all very high-level quality attorneys. You can't say enough good things about them. How many judges, do you know how many? We have 95 counties.
Correct.
How many sessions judges say? You got any idea?
I would have no idea.
Me either. I should know that, but I know we got 95 probably.
At least 95.
Yeah, we got at least that many in circuit and restrictions. Let's talk about money. I have a problem with my neighbor. He has a pet whatever, and he runs over and crashes my house or does something, or drives his car or whatever, and there's $80,000 worth of damage. He won't pay me. I sue him. Where do I go?
Circuit court.
And why do I go to circuit?
Well, Sessions Court's limited to $25,000.
That went up a few years ago. It used to be 15.
It used to be 15, and they raised it. Now it's 25. But no, you would most likely be suing that individual in circuit court and take your cause of action there.
Okay. And is there any? And if I'm suing a restaurant for $2 million because my family got sick and ill or something, something worse happened, would that be in circuit court?
Correct. You would probably still be in circuit court.
How do I get to Chancery Court? How do I get across the hall if I need to?
Get a good property line dispute.
But there's got to be some money in Chancery. There's got to be some disputes. I talk to big civil attorneys. They say Chancery is really important.
It absolutely is. Our Chancery Court has the same jurisdiction as the circuit court here. But generally, you see some
It's a good example. Like Judge Donahue hears all criminal. Maybe somebody else is hearing all of the civil.
Correct.
And there's 3 judges down there. There's a circuit, a criminal, and a chancery.
See, and in that, like for example, in that county, they have a designated criminal court judge, and,
That's right.
and then here we just don't. We have.
But who makes that decision? The county has to petition the state to have those positions?
I think it has to be established by
Private act?
private act, I believe, or
Yeah.
or
Well, I think there's a circuit in every county no matter what.
correct.
And I think if you want to differ off of that, being on size and things, you have to do some of that. Well, we've been very fortunate to have excellent judges and good legal people over the years. I can remember going back to Alan Kidwell, some of the great minds of the 60s and 70s, just some really, Judge Kidwell and some other friends. His daughter went to school with me. We all grew up around a lot of those judges, and they were just well thought of. Go ahead.
Well, you can usually tell. I always have a saying: you never notice when you have good judges in a county, but you will always know when you have a bad one.
Yeah.
And we've been very fortunate in this county, I think, over
Yeah,
the
I
years.
can't think of anybody that's really been that controversial. I mean, we've had juvenile court's always a stretch for everybody because it's so much emotion around it. So those judges get a bad rap a lot, you know. We won't go into names, but we've had extremes, we've had things, and I think they all try to do the job the way they thought it should be done.
That's correct. Juvenile, I think, is a very, very tough job. It's a very difficult. You're having to make very tough decisions. You're having to remove children from their
For
families.
things you wouldn't listen to on the news, you got to sit there for half an hour listening to some terrible things.
Oh, just things that would just make you probably you just have nightmares on some of the things. And I just, on cases I've had over the years,
Yeah.
you hear just horrible, heartbreaking stories. And judges have to deal with that day in and day out, especially the juvenile judge. It's a very difficult
Because the
job.
juvenile judge is trying to determine where the child's going to go, and the child. I mean, it really upsets me to hear those kinds of stories because those kids are just so important and so precious, and they're victims. They're victims of a dysfunctional world, in my opinion. Collateral damage of drug use, collateral damage of selfless people, and you know, we weren't great in 40, 50 years ago, but at least our parents were there every day and they did their jobs. You know, I mean, you know, when you get to be 16, 18, it's not as big an issue, but little 8, 9-year-olds don't need that.
No.
I know I'm preaching, but I mean, I just think it's an issue.
No, but you're right, and it's a very, very tough position. You have to decide what to do with these children. You have to decide that sometimes to remove them, and then you have to balance that because sometimes it's harmful to children, even though they're not in the best environment, to take them out of their home because you're still taking them away from their family and sometimes even their siblings as well. And so it's just a very difficult. It's a tough job.
Let's talk about Andersonville. You moved there. We got 2 or 3 minutes. You like it? I mean, you've obviously worked in these areas for a long time. You're a member of Andersonville First Baptist Church?
We've been attending. We haven't technically joined yet, but we've been going there. Love it. It's a nice church. My son absolutely took to it. He will go even on evenings and times whenever we're like, he'll even go to Sunday school on
Isn't
days
that
that we
great?
don't go. So he's
good.
He loves it. But we love the area. I thought where I moved from was quiet. It amazes me.
Growing area, isn't it? Growing.
It's growing, but it amazes me. Like we moved into a neighborhood, how quiet and peaceful it is out there, just in general, all the time.
Well, you've got 2 wonderful county commissioners out there, Josh Anderson and my favorite, Shelley Vandegrift. Just good people.
Oh yes, I've known Josh for a long time. I know who Miss Vandergriff is, but I know Josh really well. He's a good person,
It's a great neighborhood, great place to live, great area. You know, I mean, you sure picked a good one there. Came right over the border, didn't you?
Oh,
Stopped
yes.
at the first village you got to. That's great. Well, you know, your whole life has been in Anderson County, even though you've had a home up there. So I know most people here really appreciate your work in the community and your legal work. And there's challenges ahead.
Oh yes, and we love it here in the community, and I'll probably be here till I pass on. So.
Well, we appreciate all your support of our friends and the community events and stuff. I don't have anything else really to talk about. I feel good. I think we've covered almost everything. Appeals and everything, and the courts and the counties. Can you think of anything? Tell me more about Anderson County. Where does your daughter go to school?
Oh, she goes to South Clinton.
Oh, everybody goes to
Loves it
South
there.
Clinton, I think.
Oh, she does wonderful there. Straight A student. The teachers and the staff there are all
Good
really
people.
great.
South Clinton's a great school.
I
Our
can-
friend Wendy Manis is over there, and she's the city council person from that area. She just brags on that school, and she's going where?
she's going to South Clinton, and then she's going to Norris Middle.
Nikki, you get that? Nikki Swisher, she's great. I heard y'all met her at Sean Gleason's house, and she is wonderful, her and her husband. He's done so much with the boys' clubs, and you're in a great part of town. I mean, I'm an Oak Ridge boy, will always be, but I mean, you're in a great part of town. It's just wonderful up there. All the things that are going on. Norris, I'm proud of my Oak Ridge schools, but Norris is as good as anywhere. Norris Middle's as good as anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's where my wife went as well, and we're excited for her to be there. And, of course, like you said, the Swishers, and so we know we'll have people watching out for her.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you,
We're
Alex.
gone, folks. We appreciate you. See you next Thursday at 7.